Well, hello and a very warm welcome. My name's Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses. A warm welcome if you're a returning viewer and an equally warm welcome if you're viewing my channel for the very first time. I'm sorry if it's a little bit gloomy in here. I'm not quite sure, I can't tell. But it's quite early in the morning because I'm about to go off and catch a train to London for some very exciting event, which I can't share with you yet. Um, but I thought I would make this video before I leave, otherwise it won't go out this week and then goodness knows what would happen. So I'm going to try and be quick, although having said that, when I made my video last year of my best books so far of 2024, which went out a similar time, at beginning of July, I only chose 6 books, and this year, because my reading has been so sensational, I've chosen 10. So I'm going to try and just do 10 very quick elevator pitch style comments on each of these 10 books. So it might be a little bit more frenetic than usual, although somehow I doubt it because I don't seem to be able to do that. The reason that I've chosen 10 is because my reading year has been just phenomenal so far, and it was really difficult to whittle down to 6. In fact, I didn't feel I could. So goodness knows what's going to happen in December when I get to the end of the year and I've got to think about my favourite books of the year. But yeah, so I thought I would reveal these books to you in alphabetical order because I couldn't rank order them. I just couldn't do it. I need a bit more mulling, and some of them I've read quite recently as well, so I don't really feel it's fair to put one against the other. So here we go. So first up, as I say, alphabetically, is Dusk by Robbie Arnott, which I read right back in January. And I love Robbie Arnott's writing. This is the story of twins who are venturing out into some sort of kind of Australian Midwest almost. They're really rugged, they're really raw, they have all sorts of amazing adventures, but what they have done is they have signed up, or they sign up because they're destitute and they're desperate for money and their chances, and they sign up to track down, I think it's a puma, I want to say a puma. It is a puma, called Dusk, hence the title. And this book has stayed with me ever since. The writing is beautiful, the characters are amazing, and I couldn't put it down. There are some really interesting things that Robbie Arnott does with form in this book, and I just think he's a writer who is at the absolute top of his game. So that is in my top 10. Next up is The Book of Guilt by Chidgey, and I only finished this quite recently, and I had long anticipated this book. And this is Chidgey taking a completely different strand, as she seems to, certainly with the 4 books of hers that I've read so far, and I can't wait to get to her back catalogue. But The Book of Guilt tells the story of triplets, as you can see from the front. They're growing up in Hampshire in a huge sprawling house. It's clearly some sort of institution, but we don't really know what, and neither do they. And what's really strange about their upbringing is that they don't have conventional parents. They have mother morning, mother afternoon and mother evening. And then growing up elsewhere in the country in a more suburban setting is a young girl called Nancy. And again, you see everything through the children's eyes pretty much. There's one adult character whose viewpoint you get, and she's the Minister for Loneliness. Now think about that. And Nancy, clearly, there's something not right about Nancy's world either, and she's just starting to work that out, and we kind of work that out alongside her. And this is really gripping. Could not put it down, did not disappoint at all. And then I was reading the shortlist for the Walter Scott Prize, which is a prize for historical fiction, and came across this, and I wouldn't have read it otherwise, which is what's wonderful about prize reading. And this is The Mare by Angharad, Hampshire, and this is a fictionalized account of a true life, and it tells the story of the Mare, of the title, who was a female concentration camp commandant. Is that the right word? Anyway, she ran a concentration camp. She was so vicious that she got the name The Mare because she literally whipped women to death. And what Angharad, Hampshire tries to do in this novel is to make sense of that, or as far as we ever can, try and understand this woman's psychology. And it's brilliantly framed because the woman has survived the war, she's married, she's living in America, and her American husband, who fought for the Allies in the war, knows nothing about her past. So it's just, again, I read it really, really quickly. I couldn't put it down, and the story alternates between both perspectives. So you're kind of unpicking things alongside him. It's just brilliant. Summerwater by Sarah Moss. I read this again very early on in the year, but it's really stayed with me. It's just a beautiful exploration of humanity on holiday, and I put holiday in inverted commas because the setting is a cabin in somewhere in Scotland. It starts with a woman going off fell running, and she just seems to be running for her life. But it actually focused on 12 different groups of people who are all in these different cabins, and the central sort of characters, if you can call them that, are kind of sort of working out who everyone else is. And there's one couple with a child who really don't seem to fit in, and it's all a bit creepy. But I love this. It isn't plot driven, but it kind of is. And I don't know how she does that. And it's a really good exploration of relationships and, you know, why people travel, why they go on holiday, why they take themselves to a different space. And again, very recently, I read Blackwood's Blue Sky by Yoshimoto Ivey. I adored this book. It's a story that makes the implausible completely plausible. And I can't say very much about it because I'm really worried I'd give things away. But it tells the story of a young woman called Birdie who's bringing up her daughter on her own. She's quite dysfunctional. She likes to drink. She likes to smoke weed. She works in a bar, sort of in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, which is where Yoshimoto Ivey is from. And this book is just... She meets this character called Arthur and becomes entangled with him, and he is not what he seems. I don't want to say any more, but this book is full of humanity, full of really rich characters. I loved the grit of Birdie. I absolutely loved her, and her desire to do something different. She's sort of driven by that. And the book is also packed full of nature. If you're a nature fan, if you love being in the big outdoors, this is a book that will take you to those spaces. I feel like I've been to that part of Alaska through Yoshimoto Ivey's writing. Absolutely wonderful. And of course, Maggie O'Farrell. If I've read anything by Maggie O'Farrell this year, it's probably going to appear in my top 10. After You'd Gone, it's her very first novel. It's really, really unputdownable. Again, a lot of these books are. It's masterful. I mean, you can't, you know, reading her first novel now, having read so many of her others, it was really interesting to reflect on how her writing had developed. You can see all the sort of the things that she's interested in, the themes and the ideas are there in this very first novel. It tells the story of Alice, who takes a train journey right at the beginning of the book to visit her sisters up in Scotland. She's living in London, and she meets her sisters, she goes into the train toilet, she's washing her hands, and she sees something in the mirror, and then she immediately gets on the train and goes back home, and we don't know why. And I think I can say this, I don't think I'm giving anything away, but Alice ends up in a coma. So you've got this kind of coma dream sort of out-of-body experience wafting in and out of the novel. It's sort of a bit fragmentary, but you've also got the story of Alice's family, particularly of her parents and the dynamics between them, which I found really interesting. And also at the heart of this is a fantastic, beautiful romance, a beautiful love story, which really, really made my heart palpitate and reminded me of what it's like, the experience of being in love, deeply in love for the very first time. So thank you, Maggie. I loved that book. I wanted Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout to win the Women's Prize for Fiction. Look how well it's coordinated with my London dress. So Elizabeth Strout has written lots and lots of books. I've only read one other, so don't be frightened of picking this up if you've not read of any of her other books, because I know she sort of built this world which is probably a bit like her own world, I guess, where she lives in Maine in America. And this book tells the story of Lucy Barton, I've got to get this the right way around, who is one of her lead characters, and her friendship with Bob, not Bill, Bob Burgess. I felt that wasn't right when I said it. And they are really deep friends. It explores their relationship and their feelings for one another. It does it in such a beautiful way. Bob, whilst through the duration of the novel, is trying to, he's a lawyer, he's got a legal background, although he's retired, and he is trying to support a young man who has learning difficulties, I want to say. Certainly doesn't fit in very easily with society. And he is accused of murdering his own mother, and that whole story is absolutely fascinating. And also Lucy Barton meets Olive Kitteridge, who I know is another of Elizabeth Strout's characters. And Olive Kitteridge is quite a cranky old lady, and they share stories, and I just loved it. There is not a word out of place in this novel. If you want to read beautiful prose, then this is the book for you. I just loved it. And again, it's a page turner as well, at the same time as being quite a gentle, beautiful read. I read The Road Home again. This is the second time I've read this book. I don't reread books very often. This was in preparation for an interview with Rose Tremain that hasn't happened yet. Never mind. But this was one of my favourite books of all time. So I read it, well, 20 years ago, or whenever it first came out, 2007, I want to say. And loved it. And I reread it and still loved it. It's a really challenging, tough, hard read. It tells the story of Lev, who chooses to leave his home in Eastern Europe. We never quite find out exactly where it is, and move to the UK. It starts with him on a coach. He's clearly got he's not very well prepared for his life in England, even though he's been having English classes and all that kind of thing. And the England that he meets when he gets there is not the England that he expects. And what Rose Tremain does in this novel is she really exposes the truth, some really difficult truths about British society through Lev's eyes. And he is, I think, an amazing character. He's got a lot of flaws, but I really enjoyed following his journey and his experiences. And I absolutely love his relationship with his friend Rudy back at home, who, you know, they had lots of adventures as children. It's a really, in many ways, it's a story about love. It's a story about friendship. It's a story about what people do when they, you know, the lengths they'll go to try to provide an income for, in his case, his mother and his young daughter, because he's been widowed, and he's grieving as well. So this is also a novel about grief. It's just brilliant, but it's heavy. You know, it really affected my mood when I read this book. The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden, which actually won the Women's Prize for Fiction. I think this is an absolutely amazing novel, and I can't believe it's a debut. I still can't believe that, even having seen Yael speak so powerfully at the Women's Prize when she made her acceptance speech. She's a writer from the Netherlands, and this story is set in the Netherlands in a small community, and it's about a woman who's living in the house that she grew up in and kind of preserving it almost like a museum. Nothing must be out of place, nothing must be moved. It's the story about her relationship with her siblings. She's not going to inherit the house, one of her brothers is, and yet she's kind of the caretaker of it. She's quite starchy, she's quite stiff, she's quite very conventional. She really cares about what people think, and feels judged by society if she puts the thing out of place. And what happens is her brother forms a relationship with a young woman who is completely the opposite. She's really unconventional. She doesn't care about convention. And the brother dumps this young woman on our protagonist and leaves them in the house together for several weeks, and all sorts of things unfold. And this book taught me about a strand of history I didn't know anything about. There was a twist in it which really took my breath away. It's just, I can't wait to see what she writes next. I will be running to the bookshop to buy her next book. And finally, gosh, haven't I done well? It's reading 15 minutes on my screen. That's unheard of. I didn't think I could do this. I'm learning. This is Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. And again, I read this a lot earlier in the year, but it has stayed with me. This book is just beautiful. It's interesting, isn't it, how many of these books are about grief. So here we have a young girl who's lost her parents, well, her grandmother, I think it is, who she's sort of grown up with. And she is provided with sustenance and love and friendship by a mother and son. And it turns out that the mother is trans. And actually that's kind of the backdrop. It's sort of just accepted and normal, except it isn't quite because of what happens later in the story. And actually there are two stories in here. But I just thought the writing was stunning, really, really beautiful writing. It really made me think about all sorts of things. And there are scenes in this. There's a scene on a bridge. There's a scene in the living room that are just still thriving in my head and sort of follow me around. And isn't that the wonderful thing about reading, that it sort of creates all these extra rooms, this labyrinth in your head of beautiful images and thoughts from all the books that you carry with you once you've finished them. So there we are. Wow, I'm amazed. I'm actually quite impressed with myself. So apologies if it is a bit dingy and gloomy in here. I need to go on some sort of course to find out how to film things properly, I think. But yes, I'm off to London, and I'm sure you'll hear all about that trip before this video goes out, actually, but I'm not going to mention it just in case. Anyway, take care, everybody, and very happy reading. What have your top 10 books been of the year so far? Have you read any of the ones I've mentioned? Were they brilliant? Did they disappoint you? And, you know, pitch me a few books that I need to pick up over the next few months. Take care, everybody. Sending warm wishes from it's not dawn, it's a bit it's a little bit later than that, but I'm going to go and catch my train. Take care, everyone. Bye.